Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me. I just need to make a very quick correction to the bio because otherwise my editor is going to kill me. The book is out since April of 2014. These Mexican hometown associations in Chicagoan, from local to transnational civic engagement, Rutgers University Press. I hope you buy it. So thank you very much again to the organizers to this wonderful event. I am very excited to be here and share with you an answer to the question that was posed to me that is a little bit twisting the question in terms of why is it that Mexican immigrants, even after naturalizing as United States citizens, seem to be very much engaged in these hometown associations and federations. So I guess the question from the host is like whether or not this active binational civic engagement is detracting Mexican immigrants into being more fully incorporated in the civic and social life of the United States. So let me share with you a little bit of what I know so far on this issue. After taking almost a decade observing the participation of hometown associations, not only in the city of Chicago, but across the United States. So the first thing, I hope to accomplish two goals in the very limited amount of time that I have. First, I would like to demystify the idea that I've been hearing thus far from Marty and from Juan, that political participation is only accomplished by the voting booth. I hope you leave this room with the idea that this is not the only way to participate. And it's not a panacea, it's not a magic bullet that once you go and fold this neatly nice piece of paper and put it there, the next day we are all gonna be happy Mexicans with rights and like politicians are gonna obey all the demands. It's not that quickly and not that simple. And the second thing that I hope to accomplish in this very little time is that you are gonna be able to embrace the potential of binational civic engagement, which basically means that Mexican immigrants will have the opportunity to be active citizens in more than one nation state. Let's, in this case, be the United States of America and Mexico as well. And why this matters, and why this is not a contradiction, this is not bigamy, this is not like not being loyal to a nation, why this matters, why it's important. Okay, so one example of like how people came together and was telling U.S. society like the participation is not only exercised through the voting booth. This, a very good example that we have is 2006 immigrant marches that happened here in Chicago and across 250 cities across the United States, in which 6 to 7 million Latinos went out to the streets to demand rights as dignity, rights as immigrants, that they really wanted to participate in the social fabric, and they did it peacefully, very importantly. So one of the most important slogans that still resonates today is that across the US, most marchers had this uniform message saying, today we march, tomorrow we vote. We have yet until in 2014 to materialize this promise, and hopefully it's not going to become empty vacuum noise that people keep on saying, yeah, but when is going to be the tomorrow? When are they voting? They are still not registered and they are behind. Naturalizations are not enough still. So, but why? Why like this community? You have heard that, yeah, they are not registered and they don't participate enough. But let me remind you that this is a community that for more than 100 years, the Mexican Americans in the United States have been disenfranchised. And they have been disenfranchised from the only political system many of them have belonged to, which is Mexico. Remember that for 70 years, more than 70 years, one-party rule dominated in Mexico, which make very non-interesting to vote while they were living there. So after they moved here, it happens that they became instantly disenfranchised because for a very long time, Mexico did not allow them to vote in Mexican elections. It's only until 2006, which looks like yesterday, that Mexicans living in the United States were allowed to go to the voting booth and elect Mexico's president. Okay? And yet the disenfranchisement was also present in the United States because many, while became legal permanent residents, were not given the tools and were not invited by politicians and by the local civic leaders to actually become part and parcel of US society. After 1986, when President Reagan was in power, it was the last time that there was an enormous, like, a structured push to give out NGOs money, millions of dollars, to actually invite green card holders to take the test, to become naturalized citizens, to go to these classes, citizenship classes, so that they could become interested. Because it's not naturally that people are going to decide, yes, now tomorrow I'm going to present this test, because this test, unfortunately, is still a literacy test for those who came after 1965. So what they are testing here is the level of literacy. And for those of you who know Mexico, you know that literacy rates have been improving, but only in the last 2 decades. Many of the immigrants who came right after or right before 1965 were vastly illiterate. And now you are asking them to answer 300 and plus questions about the sophisticated political system. It's not as simple as, no, they do not want to naturalize, they do not want to become citizens. It's that there are real barriers. Some are explicit and others hidden that have a lot to do with their opportunities for passing such a naturalization test. But the good news is the triumph of the numbers, but the important challenge here is to make them count for important relationships and to increase the bilateral positive relations in these two great nations, Mexico and the United States. So what are some, I want to share quickly with you some of the consequences of having here in Chicago the second largest Mexican population in the entire United States, okay? So what happens when you have this very large population that is plus, like 1 million plus living in Chicago metro area? There are important economic consequences to that. So now Mexico is Illinois' third largest international market for inbound travel. In 2012, the total Illinois-Mexico trade totaled $15 billion US, and Illinois ranked number 6th among the 50 states for exports to Mexico. Mexico is now Illinois' second largest export market, okay? So this is really important numbers. There is a lot to be done for increasing the participation, but binational migrant civic engagement offers Mexican immigrants the possibility of a social education experience to act collectively for common ends without the constraints of formal political participation that requires citizenship status to vote in US elections. And some of them do not have the freedom of mobility to vote in Mexican elections either, because you still need to have a voting card to vote in Mexican elections, and for getting the voting card, you need to pay a plane ticket to Mexico. And only those with the privilege of papers, also known as dual citizens de jure and de facto, are those who can exercise those rights. So still, enfranchisement becomes, like, still materializes with lots of caveats in this sense. Okay, so it's very important to connect these immigrants with institutions that are ethnic, such as hometown associations, that can bridge these two societies and that help them make the transition to the US society. So I want to close by telling you the vast diversity of the membership that these hometown association members belong to. They not only do projects in Mexico, but here in the United States, they are leaders at soccer and other sports clubs. They are members of faith-based moral communities. They belong to parent-teacher organizations, to local school councils in Chicago public schools. They are members and leaders of the Democratic Party, of the GOP as well, and political action committees. They do myriad of things. And so economically, I'm going to finish with the last bit of statistics that to me is very shocking when you want to measure the total impact of the more than 1,000 hometown associations that exist across the entire United States. Let me finish with this piece of information. Between 2002 in 2007, hometown associations contributed between 30 million and 40 million US dollars annually for infrastructure development. And this amount is similar to that contributed to Mexico by private US foundations. And here I include Ford, Rockefeller, MacArthur, and many more as those, okay? So in contrast, in the year of 2009, Mexico received approximately $11 million in development assistance from the United States Agency for International Development, the so-called USAID, which is equivalent to less than 1% from the total official aid Mexico received from the US government that year. So I hope that you end up wondering what happened with the other 99% of official aid that the US sends to Mexico. You know what? This 99% of official aid is invested in one thing, the Merida Initiative. And that means drones, airplanes, military equipment, and training for drug cartels. And this will never attack root causes of migration. So this will never help for living in a world where migration is only one option, but not the only one. Thank you.